Hey everyone, this is a quick commentary after my time with the Battlefield 6 beta in early access. As a veteran of the series, I'm listing here all the things that immediately caught my eye. This material was made in podcast form. I invite you to listen in quickly because, in my opinion, the devs really have a lot to fix if they want players to stick with this game for the long haul. Let's start with the positives. The first plus is that in the background of the maps outside the arena, there's really a lot going on. You can see not just the fighting itself, but also environmental animations, planes flying by, explosions somewhere on the horizon. Because of that, everything gets a kind of living feeling, not just static. But honestly, I see this more as a tech showcase, like, hey, it's possible. The next positive is how tanks and armored vehicles handle. Vehicles are really well animated. They have tons of details, and controlling them is just fun. You can feel the weight of the machine, and from what I saw online before, I was expecting something else entirely. So yeah, driving is enjoyable and dynamic, and the visual effects really do their job. The third plus is the new mechanic for dragging wounded teammates. It works smoothly and often actually saves lives. In the heat of battle, you can pull your buddy out from under fire. This builds a sense of teamwork for medics, but not just for them, and it gives new tactical options during matches. The last positive, the gunplay. It's just solid. The feeling is satisfying. Weapons have proper recoil and sound. But here's the question. How many guns will we actually see in the final version? Because if there aren't enough, it'll get boring fast. And now we move on to the minuses, which unfortunately are numerous. First minus, after your vehicle is destroyed, you just fall out of it. This makes zero sense because logically, you should die in that moment. This mechanic breaks immersion and often leads to comic situations where half your squad just falls out of a burning tank. Now for the next minus, hanging onto the back of tanks. This looks absolutely embarrassing and has nothing to do with realism or helping the player. Instead, they should give you the option to climb onto the vehicle, not like now, where your character is literally just hanging on the back of the Abrams. What's worse, that's where the engine exhaust is, so physically it makes no sense and just looks like a bug. Moving on, very often when throwing a grenade, there's no shout or sound effect at all. There isn't even the classic eat this, mother, and so on. Because of that, grenade throws are less expressive and less satisfying. The animation could also be better because right now grenades fly like crumpled up paper balls, not something heavy and metallic. Next minus, the defibrillator. Its animation is totally unnatural. It's too short or just clicks. Because of that, the whole feeling of saving the wounded suffers, and it just yanks you out of the battle atmosphere, in my opinion. They should fix this, or at least add the movie-style rubbing of the paddles together. Next flaw is identical vehicles on both teams, and I want to emphasize this is a huge flaw, one of the biggest. Both sides have Abrams, the same APCs, everything identical. Not only does it make no narrative sense, but it's even confusing during the match when you think someone stole your team's vehicle. Personally, I was hoping that in the 6th Battlefield, we'd see a clear split between NATO and Pax Armada, but with some national flavor like before. That's always been one of the series' biggest strengths. But here we have a repeat of the Battlefield 22 mistake and these so-called no-nation teams. Now, something very noticeable, or rather, something you notice with your ears, female character voices. They make up about 3/4 of all lines, regardless of the class you pick. And officially, in the class menu, there are 4 classes, with only the engineer being a woman, by the way. A sniper would be a more logical female, not an engineer with heavy rocket launchers. But even when I'm playing a male character, like Assault or Support, the command lines you select from your menu are delivered in a female voice. And honestly, this is just nuts and really breaks immersion and authenticity. Another minus? A small one, but I noticed it. The machine gun on the armored APCs. This gun is just overly stable. It barely shakes at all. There's no real vibration, so it looks and sounds like a cheap cardboard toy. You don't feel like it's a real weapon mounted on a vehicle. Now, something that jumps out at you immediately from the minuses, the menu interface is just way too big. Everything should be scaled down to 75% of its current size, because by default, it's hard to keep track and your eyes get lost. Next minus is conquest mode in the current lobby-based system. So without servers, in the default version there are just too few tickets. Rounds end too quickly before you even get a chance to try out a tactic or play the map your own way. The pace is too fast, which doesn't give you the satisfaction of a longer fight. It's not hyper terrible in this regard, but you can really feel it, and honestly, even adding 15% more tickets would improve things. Another thing is that vehicle ammo resupplies at the base are too slow. Often, by the time you finally refill your vehicle, a new one could have already spawned if you just destroyed yours earlier. This makes no sense and hurts the gameplay, especially since there are so few tickets and sometimes you spend a third of the match just regenerating tank ammo. Now, a small minus, but one that makes it harder to get your bearings in a fight. The markers over enemies and teammates are just too big. Big. Instead of helping, they kind of get in the way and block your view. Another minus, regardless of gender, the character shoutouts from selectable commands are artificial, sound really unnatural, and don't build a Battlefield vibe at all. You can tell these are acted lines, not real emotions or orders. Kind of like me right now. To be clear, I mean the ones you pick in the menu, not the ones that play automatically in the background during events on the map. The next to last thing, again about game immersion. There are no clear NATO or Pax Armada symbols in the menu or the game itself. Everywhere there are only, or at best, faceless, boring vector graphics for these factions. There's no identity. You don't feel the sides of the conflict. There's none of the vibe you got, for example, playing as Japanese in Battlefield 5, or as Chinese in Battlefield 4, Russians in Battlefield 3, or Germans in Battlefield 1. I clearly remember that, especially many months or even years after those games launched, it was usually the loyal players still playing who liked taking on the role of a faction. Jokes at the end of matches were common, like people yelling Banzai while playing Japanese. When you played as Chinese in Battlefield 4, you didn't even understand what they were saying. But it was fun. It gave you that vision of this is probably what a war between those countries would look like. Here, you just don't have that imagination. The game doesn't even push you in that direction. So in the end, you don't feel like playing for hours. That's the factor that drives players of titles like Hearts of Iron 4. And the last minus, a really important one, no dedicated servers. In a game like this, that's a serious problem because without the ability to choose servers, you'll never get the kind of fun or match quality this series deserves. If someone wants to play on one map 24/7 with the same group of people on a server, they should have that option and not be forced into everything. And obviously, after every map, there's a total reshuffle of people assigned to the lobby. That's it from me. Let me know what stood out to you in the Battlefield 6 beta. Thanks for listening, and sorry for the way I'm delivering this, but I believe what matters is the content of the topic, not the tone of my voice. To sum up, there's huge potential here, but I think this title is standing at the edge of a cliff, and if it doesn't make bold, decisive changes, I just don't see this talk about listening to the community and the series returning to a triumphant position. To use a classic line, cancer is cut out entirely, not piece by piece, and you can't try to please everyone by dividing it up into little chunks.